I borrowed my mother's phone and accidentally uncovered a hidden folder. Inside were family vacation photos I had never seen, my sister's birthday, family trips, moments I was completely absent from. The next day, I sent them a message. Don't ever contact me again. What happened after that left me absolutely speechless. I accidentally borrowed Mom Carol's phone and opened a hidden folder. Inside were family vacation photos I had never seen. My sister Brittany's birthday trips with Mom and Dad Robert. I wasn't there. The next day, I sent them a message. Don't contact me again. What happened next left me speechless. As the morning sun illuminated Chicago's towering skyscrapers, I was already at my desk. It was my 7th year as a senior designer at the advertising agency Creative Impulse. The light streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the photo frame neatly arranged on my desk. Inside, only my graduation photo sat in the frame. I had meticulously tied my hair into a ponytail, wearing a simple yet sophisticated navy blouse and gray pantsuit. Colleagues often called me a perfectionist, sometimes keeping their distance, but everyone acknowledged the quality of my work. Taking a deep breath, I sipped my coffee and checked my emails. A message from Mom Carol flashed in the corner of the screen. After a moment's hesitation, I decided to open it. Honey, I haven't received your response about Dad Robert's birthday party. It's next Sunday. Your sister Brittany has even taken special time off work. I sighed as I stared at the screen. Carol, my mother, had worked as an English teacher at Oak Park High School in suburban Chicago for 25 years. She was adored by her students and respected by her colleagues. At home, she always portrayed the image of the perfect mother, showing particular doting affection for Brittany, my younger sister. I'll reply later, I muttered, leaving the email marked as read. I didn't want to go to Dad Robert's birthday party. Robert, my father, had worked as a sales manager at the local real estate company, Hunter Realty, for over 20 years. He was sociable, pleasant, and well regarded by clients. However, at home, he always deferred to my mother Carol's opinions and rarely intervened in conflicts between his daughters. I often describe my relationship with Robert as superficial respect. He was proud of my grades and professional successes, but never truly tried to understand me. Instead, Robert's attention was always directed toward Brittany, my sister. Just thinking of that name stirred complex emotions. Brittany worked in the personal banking division at First National Bank, and rumors of her promotion to assistant branch manager had been circulating recently. With long blonde hair and blue eyes, Brittany had been the cheerleading captain in school and still maintained an active social life, going out to parties with friends on weekends. Mom Carol's favorite, I whispered quietly. It wasn't mere jealousy, it was a conclusion drawn from years of observation. At family gatherings, my mother Carol would be excitedly talking about Brittany while showing only formal interest in my achievements. My phone on the desk vibrated. The screen displayed Grandfather William Morrison. My expression softened. It was a call from my maternal grandfather, William Morrison, a former judge and a wealthy man. He might be the only family member I could truly open up to. Good morning, grandfather. I answered the phone with a cheerful voice. Good morning, granddaughter. How are you doing? William Morrison's warm voice resonated through the phone. I'm fine, just busy. How are you? Still not letting the young ones beat me at chess, William laughed, the sound warm and familiar. About Robert's birthday party. You're coming, aren't you? I hesitated for a moment. I haven't decided yet. Work is keeping me busy. My grandfather William Morrison sighed deeply on the other end. I understand, granddaughter. I know how difficult family gatherings can be for you, but would you come for my sake? I'm getting old. There aren't many opportunities for the whole family to gather. I closed my eyes and pressed my forehead with my hand. I couldn't refuse my grandfather William Morrison's words. All right, grandfather, I'll come. I'm relieved to hear that. Also, I saw the article about your project last month. It was excellent. Your talent is genuine. Tears welled up in my eyes at his words. After hanging up, I gazed out the window, deep in thought. Since childhood, I had felt like I was different in the family. Serious and sincere, my family often described me as boring and inflexible. My relationships with my family, especially those outside my grandfather William Morrison, seemed to grow more distant with each passing year. I had been invited to family gatherings less frequently in recent years. Even for Christmas and Thanksgiving, I was increasingly told, "You must be busy." It was partly true, but I sometimes deliberately scheduled appointments, anticipating the rejection. I turned my chair back to face my computer screen. I opened my calendar and checked next Sunday. It was blank. Slowly, I typed Dad Robert's birthday party and saved it. I wonder what excuses I'll hear this time, I muttered as I returned to work. Deep down, I yearned for family bonds while constantly fearing rejection. All I wanted was to be truly accepted as a member of the family. On Saturday afternoon, I stood on the porch of Mom Carol's house, the day before Dad Robert's birthday party. I had come to print reference materials for a new design project, as my own printer had broken down and the deadline was approaching. "Honey, you came." Carol opened the door and gave me a formal hug. "Perfect timing. Brittany just went out to buy decorations for the party, and I've just ordered the cake." "Thank you," I responded quietly. May I use the printer?" "Yes, of course. Use it in the study. By the way, have you already prepared Robert your father's present?" I gave a small smile. "Yes. I found the vintage watch he's been wanting." "Oh, that's nice," Carol said, but her voice lacked enthusiasm. "Brittany bought a golf set. Your father Robert will be thrilled." I nodded silently and headed upstairs to the study, feeling my mother Carol's words pierce my heart even as I tried not to show any emotion. Entering the study and turning on the computer, a password screen appeared. I sighed. "Mom, Carol, can you tell me the password?" I called downstairs. "Oh, I forgot. I changed it last week." Carol came upstairs. "My smartphone will be quicker. Your materials came by email, right?" Carol unlocked her iPhone and handed it to me. "Here, use this. I need to make a final confirmation call about the cake. I'll be back in about 30 minutes. "Okay, thanks." When Carol left the room, I let out a relieved sigh. I opened the email app on my mother Carol's smartphone and began searching for the materials I had sent myself. I downloaded the attachment and sent it to the printer. As the printer started working, I found myself at loose ends. Unconsciously, I returned to the home screen of my mother Carol's phone and began scrolling through the apps. My attention was caught by a folder labeled Private Albums. "Private Albums," I whispered. Driven by curiosity, I tapped on the folder. The screen displayed dozens of photo albums with titles like Brittany's Birthday, Florida Trip 23, Christmas Dinner, Family Weekend. I frowned. I had never heard about these events. Strange. I tapped on the album titled Brittany's Birthday. Photos appeared one after another. My sister Brittany sitting smiling in front of a birthday cake. Surrounding her were my parents Robert and Carol, friends, and relatives. I gasped. This was from 3 months ago. I hadn't been invited. What is this? My hands began to shake. Next, I opened Florida Trip 23. There were photos of my parents Robert and Carol and Brittany enjoying themselves on a beach in Miami. Checking the date, it was the same week I had been told, "Can't go on a family trip because of an important presentation." They lied to me. My voice trembled. Then, Christmas dinner. And this was last Christmas when I had been told, "There are no special family plans," and spent the day alone in my apartment. The photos showed the family around a lavish dinner table. Even grandfather William Morrison was there. My heart began to race. I opened Family Weekend and saw more family photos without me in them. I went through all the albums in the folder one by one. In none of the photos was I present. Why? Tears fell from my eyes. I didn't even notice that the printer had stopped. At that moment, I heard the door opening downstairs. "Honey, did you finish printing the materials?" Carol's voice called out. I quickly restored the phone to its original state and wiped my tears. However, I couldn't wipe away the emptiness and pain spreading inside my chest. "Yes, I did," I answered with a trembling voice. When Carol returned to the study, I had already packed my materials into my bag and was standing. "You're leaving already?" Carol asked, somewhat surprised. "Yes, I still have things to do." I couldn't meet my mother's eyes. "I see. You're coming to the party tomorrow, right?" I nodded without saying anything. I hurried down the stairs and toward the front door. "Honey, are you okay? Did something happen?" Carol followed after me. "Nothing. See you tomorrow," I answered briefly, opening the door and stepping outside. Once in my car, I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and cried quietly. The unease I had felt for years now stood clearly before me in a definite form. I had been excluded from my family, and deliberately so. Back at my apartment, I couldn't sleep all night. I dug into past memories, recalling my family's words and actions. "She is busy. She wouldn't be interested. Don't tell her, she'll be hurt." These words now resonated with new meaning. By the time the morning sun streamed through my window, I had made a decision. I picked up my cell phone and sent the same message to all family members. Don't contact me anymore. Then I blocked them all. Phone, social media, all means of contact. It was a strange feeling, a mixture of liberation and sadness. Chicago spring was changing gradually, just like my state of mind. 3 months after cutting ties with my family, I had maintained my isolation and immersed myself in work. My reputation at Creative Impulse had risen even more than before, having won an award last month for a campaign for a major beverage company. Sipping my coffee while looking at the cityscape visible from my office window, I felt the void in my heart still aching, but my daily life moved forward. Want to come to a new yoga class with me? My colleague Rachel stopped by my desk. I heard the instructor is really good this weekend. I smiled. Rachel was a colleague I had become particularly close to since cutting ties with my family. Sounds good. I'd like to try it. My cell phone vibrated. It was a call from an unknown number. Normally I would ignore it, but for some reason I felt compelled to answer. Hello? Honey, it's me. My heart jumped at my grandfather William Morrison's voice. Granddaughter, I'm sorry. I'm calling from a new number. I heard you blocked everyone in the family. William Morrison's voice was calm, but contained a hint of sadness. I stood up and headed to the conference room. I didn't mean to block you too, but no need to explain. I understand, William Morrison said. Again, but there's something I need to talk to you about. Could you come to my house this evening? I hesitated. What is it about? I want to talk in person. This isn't a conversation for the phone. My grandfather William Morrison's voice had an unusual urgency. All right, I finally agreed. I'll come at 6. After hanging up, I stood by the window looking down at the city of Chicago. The prospect of reuniting with my grandfather brought both expectation and anxiety to my heart. William Morrison's mansion was located in an upscale residential area in northern Chicago. Passing through the stone gates, a well-maintained garden spread out. When I rang the doorbell, the butler greeted me. I was led through the spacious hallway to my grandfather William Morrison's study. William Morrison was sitting in a leather chair in front of the fireplace. His appearance was still dignified, but he seemed a bit thinner than before. Honey, I'm glad you came. William Morrison stood up and embraced me. Grandfather, I relaxed a little in his arms. I'm glad to see you're well. Sit down. William pointed to another chair in front of the fireplace. First, I want to say that I don't blame you for your decision. I nodded silently. I know about the photos, William Morrison said quietly. Carol told me that you found them. Tears welled up in my eyes. Why, grandfather? Why am I the only one who was excluded? William Morrison finished her sentence. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Grandfather stood up and took an old leather-bound album from the bookshelf. This is the family history I've recorded over the years. I took the album from my grandfather William Morrison and opened it. It contained family photos I had never seen before. Pictures of my mother Carol when she was young, Christmas scenes with my grandparents, and then, This is, I gasped. Yes, your mother Carol and her sister Elizabeth, your Aunt Elizabeth. I was confused. Aunt? Does Mother Carol have a sister? William Morrison said gravely, Elizabeth died 30 years ago in a car accident. I continued turning the pages. Aunt Elizabeth looked very similar to my mother Carol, but her eyes seemed gentler and more open. But how does this relate to our family's problems? William Morrison let out a deep sigh. Carol and Elizabeth were always competitive. Elizabeth was bright, sociable, and loved by everyone. Carol, on the other hand, he searched for words, was more introverted and jealous. After Elizabeth's death, Carol changed. The darker aspects of her personality became stronger. Still, why am I... You resemble Elizabeth, honey, William Morrison said quietly. Not just in appearance, but in character, too. Your honesty, your kindness. For your mother Carol, perhaps that brings back painful memories. I was speechless. I stared at my Aunt Elizabeth's photos. However, that's no excuse. William Morrison's voice suddenly grew stronger. What Carol, Brittany, and Robert did to you is inexcusable. They lied to me, I said quietly, telling me there were no family gatherings, when, in fact... Yes, and they lied to me too, William Morrison said, unable to contain his anger. You're too busy to come. She said she's not interested. I believed them. I was foolish. Tears fell from my eyes. You didn't know. If I had known, I would never have allowed it, William Morrison said resolutely. Tiffany Brittany came to me last month, crying, and told me the truth, probably out of guilt. I looked up in surprise. Brittany? Yes, your estrangement seems to have shocked her. She has always done what her mother Carol told her, but this time, her conscience must have troubled her. William Morrison stood up and walked to his desk. Honey, I've made a decision. Next Saturday, I'm holding a special dinner at this house. I'm inviting the entire family. What? But I want you to come. William Morrison looked at me with serious eyes. This is also for your vindication, and I have something to tell everyone, the whole family. I looked at my grandfather with a confused expression. Grandfather, what are you? That's a surprise for the day? William Morrison smiled slightly. I'm proud of you, of your strength and sincerity, and now it's time to demonstrate that to the entire family. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. I didn't feel ready to face my family again. However, seeing my grandfather's determined gaze, I nodded weakly. All right, grandfather, I'll come. Good decision, William Morrison said with satisfaction. I'll send formal invitations, but the dress code is formal. I want to make it an occasion worthy of celebrating the family reunion. As I was leaving, I turned at the door and asked my grandfather, William Morrison, Grandfather, are you sure about this? You seem to be plotting something. William Morrison smiled. Don't worry, it's just that the time has come for the truth to be revealed. On Saturday evening, I arrived at my grandfather William Morrison's mansion, dressed in a black cocktail dress, feeling a tightness in my stomach from nervousness. I approached the front door. Inside, my family had already gathered. Robert, my father, Carol, my mother, and Brittany, my sister. Their expressions varied. Carol was clearly anxious, Robert confused, and Brittany looked at me with eyes full of guilt. Honey, Robert approached. It's been a while. Yes, it has, I answered briefly, and an awkward silence ensued. At that moment, William Morrison entered the room. He was wearing a black tuxedo and appeared unusually dignified. Everyone, please be seated, William Morrison announced. Tonight is a special dinner. As everyone sat around the dining table, William Morrison picked up his glass. Before making a toast, there's something I want to tell everyone. He stood up and said in a solemn voice, For many years, I have cherished the honor of this family. I have valued honesty and dignity. He looked at me, and tonight, I want to reaffirm those values. William Morrison looked around on the table. Carol, Robert, Brittany, his voice sounded cold. I know what you have done to my granddaughter, excluding her from the family, lying, hurting her. Carol's face changed color. Dad, that's... Be quiet! William Morrison's voice was stern. I don't want to hear excuses. These are not the values I taught you. He walked over to me. Honey is the most honest, hardworking, and valuable person in this family. Her success is all the result of her own efforts. Tears welled up in my eyes. William Morrison placed his hand on my shoulder. And tonight I have made a decision, he said, facing the table. I designate my granddaughter as the heir to my fortune and business. A wave of shock ran through the room. Carol gasped. Robert half rose from his chair. Brittany's face turned pale. Dad, what do you mean? Carol asked in a trembling voice. It's clear, William Morrison answered calmly. After my death, the Morrison family fortune and management rights to the real estate business will transfer to her. This is my final decision, and the legal procedures are already complete. I was stunned. I looked up at my grandfather, overwhelmed by his determined expression. Grandfather, this is not a punishment, William Morrison said, addressing the entire family. This is a decision to give the right responsibility to the right person. William Morrison raised his glass to me. My granddaughter and the future of the Morrison family. With trembling hands, I raised my own glass. In the imposing conference room of Morrison Real Estate, I was reviewing newly arrived documents. A week after my grandfather's dinner, I had officially been appointed as a director of the company. Holding a business card with the company logo, it still didn't feel real. The door was knocked, and my grandfather William Morrison entered. Getting adjusted? He asked with a smile. Little by little, I answered honestly. I have a lot to learn about the real estate industry. I believe in your sharp insight and learning ability. William Morrison sat in the chair opposite me. Besides, you already have proven management sense in the advertising industry. You'll bring a new perspective to this company. I nodded and shifted my gaze to the window. The downtown skyscrapers were visible. What about Father Robert and my sister Brittany? William Morrison's expression clouded. On the surface, they're accepting your appointment. Robert continues to work in the sales department as before, and Brittany started working as a financial assistant last week. Is it really okay? I couldn't hide my concern. They probably need time to face the truth, Grandfather said quietly. Now then, from today I'm giving you access to all accounting records and transaction histories to understand the company's reality. It's important to know its past. From that day on, I began dividing my time between my job at the advertising agency and managing Morrison Company. My attention to detail and analytical skills quickly began to show results. I scrutinized the accounting records for the past 5 years and investigated transaction patterns. 3 weeks later, at night, I remained at the company office, concentrating on reading materials. I frowned as I checked the same numbers repeatedly. Strange, I muttered. The monitor displayed the company's accounting system. I investigated deeper, cross-referencing bank account statements, deposit and withdrawal records, and client transaction histories. Finally, I discovered a pattern of irregularities. I took notes with trembling hands and printed out the data. Over the past 3 years, funds had been regularly withdrawn from the company and transferred to multiple accounts that were difficult to trace. Further investigation revealed that these accounts were related to personal investments by my father Robert and sister Brittany. Unbelievable. I gathered the materials and stuffed them into my bag. I needed to report to my grandfather, William Morrison, immediately. The next morning in William Morrison's home study, I explained my discovery. "Do you have proof?" William Morrison asked with a stern expression. "Yes, all the evidence is here." I spread out the files. Robert and Brittany have diverted about $2 million from the company over the past 3 years, overcharging clients, fictitious expenses, fake transaction records. I have evidence for everything. William Morrison was silent for a long time. Anger and disappointment flickered in his eyes. "I was blind," he finally said. "My own daughter Carol and granddaughter Brittany. Such betrayal." "What will you do?" I asked quietly. William Morrison stood up and walked to the window. "I considered legal action, but that would expose the family's shame." He turned around. "Instead, I'll hold another family meeting. This time I'll call all relatives. All of them. You'll call all members of the Morrison and Hunter families, including cousins. About 30 people." William Morrison's voice was filled with determination. "For the honor and future of the family, all truth should be revealed." A week later, William Morrison's mansion was bustling with relatives. For the first time in a while, I sat next to my grandfather, nervous but with a straight back. I looked at my father Robert and sister Brittany sitting on the opposite side of the room. They were clearly anxious. After dinner, William Morrison stood up and clinked his glass. "Dear family members, I've gathered you all here today at this important crossroads for the Morrison family," he said solemnly. "My life is drawing to a close. In the time I have left, I want to secure the future of this family." He beckoned to me. I stood up and stood beside my grandfather. "I formally announce that my granddaughter will be the next president of Morrison Real Estate," William Morrison declared. A murmur arose in the room. "However, before that, there's something I want everyone to know." William Morrison slowly surveyed the room. "Recent investigations have revealed that company funds were misappropriated." The room fell silent. "Robert and Brittany, stand up." William Morrison's voice was firm. My father, Robert, and sister Brittany rose to their feet, trembling. "You have betrayed the trust of the Morrison family," William Morrison said, holding up a file. "Here is the evidence. Evidence that you diverted company funds for private use and falsified records." "Wait, that's a misunderstanding." Robert's voice cracked, his desperation palpable. "You'll have an opportunity to explain," William Morrison said calmly, "but the evidence is clear." Carol stared at her husband Robert and daughter Brittany, her face drained of color. "Is this true?" Her voice trembled. Brittany, with tears in her eyes, couldn't speak. Robert remained silent. "This is my judgment," William Morrison declared, his voice unwavering. "Robert and Brittany are banished from Morrison Company as of today. My granddaughter will take full authority over the company." The room buzzed with shocked whispers. Relatives exchanged looks of surprise. I stood still, savoring the irony of fate. The family that had excluded me was now being excluded by me. There was no joy in my heart, only a quiet conviction that justice was being served. The summer sun in Chicago reflected off the glass windows of Morrison Real Estate's new office building as preparations for the first anniversary celebration continued. I stood by the window, gazing at the city below. Over the past year, my life had changed in ways I could never have imagined. "Everything is ready, President," my secretary Jennifer smiled as she entered the room. I turned around, returning her smile with gratitude. "Thank you. Has Grandfather William Morrison arrived?" "Yes, he's waiting in the lobby. Almost everyone else has gathered too." I took a deep breath and relaxed my shoulders. "Let's go then." As the elevator ascended, I reflected on the past year. After my father Robert and sister Brittany's fraud was exposed, I made the bold decision to resign from Creative Impulse. I devoted all my energy to rebuilding Morrison Company. The beginning was tough as I worked to regain the trust of the industry, but my integrity and innovative ideas eventually won recognition. Now, Morrison Company had achieved 20% growth compared to the previous year and was once again a respected name in the real estate market. Arriving at the lobby, William Morrison stood tall despite holding a cane, his posture still commanding. Beside him was my mother, Carol. "Honey," my mother called out, her voice tinged with tension. "Mom, thank you for coming," I responded quietly. Rebuilding my relationship with Carol had been slow and difficult. After deciding to separate from Robert, Carol had reached out to me, apologizing multiple times. At first, I kept my distance, but over time, I began to open my heart again. "You've raised a wonderful company," William Morrison said, embracing my shoulders. "I'm proud." "It's all thanks to you, Grandfather," I smiled. At the venue, clients and employees gathered to celebrate my achievements. Models and designs for new projects were displayed on the walls, symbolizing Morrison Company's bright future. When it was time for the congratulatory speech, William Morrison took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering today. 1 year ago, I made a significant decision regarding the future of this company, and now I am confident that decision was the right one." He extended his hand to me, and I stepped onto the stage. Applause erupted. Later, while taking a break in a quiet corner, my mother approached. "I heard from Brittany," Carol said softly. "She's still struggling with the broken engagement." I nodded silently. Brittany's fiancé's family had called off the engagement immediately after the fraud was exposed. "What did you tell her?" "The truth," Carol replied, "that actions have consequences." A quiet understanding passed between us. "What about Dad Robert?" I asked. "I heard he got a job at a small real estate company in another state." Carol shrugged. "We won't be getting back together, I think." I gazed out the window as the sunset spread across the sky. The bitterness and anger slowly faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance and a determination to move forward. "A new beginning," I said softly. "Yes," Carol agreed, "for all of us." I gave my mother a small smile. The future was still uncertain, but I felt confident in the path I was walking. No hidden truth would ever shake me again.